favorite camping trip?
Well, it's kind of funny because the older you get, you realize that your favorite memories usually come from things that weren't fun at the time. Um, like some of the most miserable camping trips I've ever had were probably my most favorite camping trips. We took this trip to Tennessee, me and Eric, over 20 years ago. We were about 21, 22 years old. We hopped in my Jeep Wrangler and we drove 11 hours all the way down to Tennessee. And we really didn't know what we were going to do once we got there. We just knew that we wanted to go camping in the Smoky Mountains. So, back then we were 21, 22-year-old kids, so we really didn't have that much money. So we stayed in a pretty cheap hotel. We figured, hey, let's go in the town, let's find a restaurant or a bar to go to, and maybe we can get some advice from the locals, as to where to go. We hopped in our vehicle and we actually drove quite a while from our hotel to Pigeon Forge, which is sort of like the gateway to the Smoky Mountains. So once we got to this restaurant, they had a little bar, and we were just sitting there talking, different ideas of where we were going to go camping, because we had no idea, where we were going to go. It wasn't like Google really was a big thing back then, so you couldn't really Google things. So we found this group of guys that were, having a good time or whatever. We went over there and started talking to them, and they were from upstate New York. So we were talking to them, asking them, where's a good place to go, and they were telling us different places to go. But one of them mentioned Fontana Lake. So this Fontana Lake, according to them, they claimed that it was one of the top 10 most wild places you could go to in the lower 48 states of the U.S. So that really kind of interested us. So we started getting some maps and some brochures with the place, and we went back to our hotel room, and we planned our trip for the entire next day. So we started getting our provisions, and we didn't have a lot of money. We figured we would buy 1 can of Beanie Weenies for each of us, 1 per day. And we had our fishing poles with us, so we figured we were going to catch a bunch of fish. That way we could eat. So
I wonder if you looked the same when you was when you were 20s.
I probably did. Probably a little less gray in my beard. So we grabbed 20 cans of Beanie Weenies because we were going to be camping for 10 days. We grabbed some water, and then we went around looking for some Tennessee whiskey. Because we were in Tennessee, we figured, hey, we can get some Tennessee whiskey. That county was something that they call a dry county. Basically, you weren't allowed to sell liquor. You could find beer, but you couldn't find liquor. So we actually had to drive about 45...
What? Are you talking about licorice, that candy?
No, liquor. Yes, alcohol. So we had to drive about 45 minutes out of this county to go find some Tennessee whiskey. So we bought a couple big jugs of Tennessee whiskey, and we grabbed all of our provisions, and then we drove back towards Pigeon Forge. We actually had to drive into North Carolina to get to where we were going. So we got to this place. It was right where the Appalachian Trail came out. And there was a little boat dock there, and a little convenience store, and they rented canoes there. So we went in there, we rented a canoe, because we were going to canoe in this lake. So we were asking the guy there, what is there any cool places to camp on this lake? Through the conversation, we were asking him about bears. Because me and Eric were used to seeing bears or whatever. And we asked him, is there a bear problem in the area? We were a little worried because we didn't pack our shotguns for once, because we were like 21, 22 years old, and we didn't know exactly what the laws were with driving through all these states, all the way from Michigan down to like Tennessee, or how much trouble we could get into. So we didn't know any of those rules, so we were just asking because we didn't have our guns with us. And the guy at the place where we rented the canoe from, he said, you don't need to worry about bears here. What you need to worry about is the wild boar. And we're like, really? Because, up in Michigan where we're from, we really don't have a wild boar problem. But he was saying that the wild boars were becoming such a problem in this area that the state was hiring hunters to come in and hunt them. Really.
What?
Yes. So we rented the canoe, so we decided that...
Enough was enough?
Yeah, well, we got in our canoe. We started canoeing, and as we got towards the middle of the lake, we actually seen a bunch of wild boar. So we noticed that there was a little campsite that you could camp at one of the islands that was in the middle of this lake. So we're thinking, you know what, if we want to avoid these wild boars, why don't we just camp on this island in the middle of the lake? So we went and hitched up our canoe to this rock. We carried all of our stuff up this hill, which was on this island, and there's a little campsite at the very top of the island. Now we unpacked our stuff or whatever, and we figured, hey, we were going to go fishing. So this is the first day that we're camping, and we go fishing in our canoe. I catch probably like a 13, 14 inch largemouth bass while we're fishing. Eric says, it's getting dark. There's only one largemouth bass. I mean, are you really going to spend the time to like cut it up and fillet it? And we're going to be catching fish all week. Why don't you just throw it back? So I threw the fish back. We canoed back to our campsite, had a little campfire. We warmed up a little can of Beanie Weenies. We started noticing as it was getting dark, the ground looked like it was moving. It was really creepy. It was almost like there was a dark blanket on the ground, and there was little waves all around the camp, but just out of eyesight. It was super weird. So I turned our flashlight on, and the entire camp area that our tent was set up was completely covered in a giant blanket of daddy long legs. So we brush ourselves off of the daddy long legs, and we hurry up and get in the tent. So we wake up the next day. We were so creeped out by the blanket of daddy long legs all night that we were like, well, let's go over on the mainland and take our chances with the wild boar. So we packed up our camp, put it all in the canoe, and then we canoed even further inland on this lake. We finally found a nice little sandy beach. It was a beautiful little campground. But guess what? We spent the next 7 days there fishing from the moment the sun came up to the moment the sun went down, and we never caught another fish that entire week.
What?
Yes, and so we're not used to this. Mind you, we only packed Beanie Weenies to eat because we thought we were going to catch fish and eat fish all week. We don't realize it because we live in Michigan. Like, I can go throw a fishing rod in a puddle down the street and catch, a fish. But, I don't know if the rules are just different or whatever, but we could not catch any fish. We could see the fish. They would just completely ignore our lures. They was just swim giant, rainbow trout would just go right by our fishing lures, wouldn't pay us any attention. We could almost go out and just reach them at some, that's what it looked like. That's how close to shore they were. They would not bite on anything. So we basically only ate one can of Beanie Weenies every single day for 7 days straight. So at that point, we had BB guns with us because we were sure that there was no laws about transporting BB guns across state lines or anything like that. So we decided to go off into the woods we were going to try finding some, squirrels, some kind of small game, just anything, because we were so hungry. So we went off into the woods. We came across this guy that was hiking the Appalachian Trail, probably about half a mile from where our campsite was. And he was a school teacher, and every year during the summertime, he tries to hike the Appalachian Trail all the way from, I think, Maine down to Fontana Lake, where the Appalachian Trail ends. And we ran across him. He was kind of happy to see other people there. Yes.
This was before you was Maria's mom, right?
Oh, yes. Yep. This is way before... I don't even think I don't even think I met your mom yet at this point.
How many years was it until you met my mom?
It would have been maybe a year after this.
Oh.
6 months to a year after this happened.
Hmm.
So, he gave us some brandy, and he was telling us about himself. So we were asking him too that, have you seen any bears out here? And he says, I've seen signs of bears, but it's mostly you just hear the wild boar. That was nice. We went back to our campsite, and that was really the only soul that we seen for the 7 days so far.
That's it?
Yeah. This place was very remote. So right around the 8th day, a motorboat came by. They waved to us, and they went past our campsite up towards where the mouth of the river came in that fed the lake. And we're like, oh, okay. That's kind of cool. There's somebody else out here. We walked about half a mile from our campsite up to where the mouth of the river came in. They were fishing, and they were catching fish left and right, and they were eating fish. And we were like, what gives? We've been here all week fishing. How are you guys catching fish? And they're like, well, you gotta fly fish here. That's how you catch fish here. And we're like, oh, really? And we weren't fly fishermen at the time. So, like, we were so hungry, we were asking them for some food. They were telling us they weren't going to give us any food, that we had to go catch our own fish. But instead, they gave us some dry chicken noodle mix. So we actually were able to eat chicken noodle soup for a night.
Hmm.
And guess where they were from?
What?
They were from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Is that England?
No. No.
Mm.
That's up north.
Mm.
They were from Marquette. Yeah, well, we were able to eat some chicken noodle soup. But yeah, basically all we ate all week was beanie weenies, and we had warm whiskey with nothing to mix it in. After the 10 days were up, we hopped back in our canoe. We canoed all the way back to the canoe rental place, dropped off our canoe, and we drove all the way back to Michigan. So now when we go camping, we always pack a little extra. And my buddy Eric, we had one can of beanie weenies left that we never ate, and occasionally he comes across it and sends me a picture of it. And so he's had this one can of beanie weenies, the last one we never ate, sitting around for 21 years.
21 years?
Yeah, it's so old that you wouldn't eat it, but it's still a moment.
Wait, you say 21 years and you was 21 at this time.
Yeah.